I never thought betrayal could feel so cold until the day I found out she had been trying to sell my business behind my back. I'm not talking about a casual conversation or a fleeting idea. She had already set plans in motion, talking to people I trusted, negotiating deals, and keeping me completely in the dark. The first time I realized something was wrong, it hit me like a punch to the gut. My stomach twisted, my hands trembled, and I felt a rush of anger and disbelief I couldn't even begin to process. My name is Alex, and I poured everything into this business. Every early morning, every sleepless night, every personal sacrifice, it was all for this. And yet, the person I thought I could trust the most was quietly trying to take it all away. She smiled at me every morning, laughed at my jokes, told me I was amazing, all while plotting behind my back. The betrayal was sharp, unbearable, and it made me question everything about our relationship. How could someone so close, someone I loved, treat me like this? I still remember the day it all started to unravel. I was sitting in my office, reviewing some routine paperwork, when my phone buzzed with a message I wasn't expecting. It was from the bank. At first, I thought it was just another monthly reminder, but the tone of the message made my heart skip a beat. The banker wasn't writing about routine numbers or deadlines. They were asking urgent questions, questions that immediately told me something was very wrong. I didn't understand yet, but a small, uneasy feeling in my chest told me that this wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. I paced my office, my mind racing. How could she do this? How could she betray me and put everything I built at risk? The thought of losing it all, my business, my reputation, my dreams, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with no safety net. I wanted to scream, to fight, to make her see the damage she was causing, but I also knew I couldn't act blindly. One wrong move, and it could all collapse. And then, there was the banker. Honestly, I never expected anyone outside of my personal circle to even notice the danger I was in. But somehow, this banker saw something I didn't, and I got the first hint that maybe, just maybe, someone was on my side. Someone who wasn't caught up in the betrayal. Someone who could help me fight back in a way I hadn't imagined. I had no idea what would happen next. I was standing on the edge of a storm I couldn't control, and every choice felt like it could tip everything into chaos. But I did know one thing. If I didn't act fast, I could lose everything I'd worked so hard for. And then the message came that changed everything. Before all of this happened, life felt simple, or at least I thought it did. My business wasn't huge, but it was mine, and I loved it. I had started it from scratch, late nights fueled by coffee and stubborn determination, turning an idea I barely believed in into something real, something people actually depended on. I had a small team I trusted, a few loyal clients, and routines that grounded me. Everything felt manageable until she walked into my life. Her name was Claire. On paper, she seemed perfect, charming, smart, and impossibly good at making people feel like they mattered. She had a way of listening that made you feel seen, even when the world was rushing past. I was drawn to her immediately. There was laughter, late-night talks, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, someone finally understood me. I opened up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone else. My dreams, my fears, my little quirks. She absorbed them all and made me feel like they were special. But over time, small things started to shift, little cracks that I tried to ignore. She would ask questions that didn't feel innocent, questions about clients, contracts, or financial details. I brushed them off as curiosity. After all, we were partners in life, weren't we? Partners shared everything. Except, apparently, the truth. Meanwhile, the banker, her name was Daniel, was someone I had met months before, purely by chance. He was practical, grounded, and annoyingly perceptive. Unlike Claire, he didn't sugarcoat things or pretend to see what he wanted to see. He noticed patterns, risks, and opportunities one couldn't always spot. At first, I found his directness unsettling, even frustrating. But now, I realized that his sharp eyes were the only reason I hadn't already walked into disaster. Leading up to the betrayal, everything felt like a delicate balance. I was juggling meetings, deadlines, and trying to nurture my relationship with Claire, believing that our love was a foundation I could lean on. I had no reason to suspect she was quietly maneuvering to sell the very thing I'd built with blood and sweat. And yet, looking back, there were signs I'd missed. The hushed phone calls, the sudden interest in investments and opportunities, the The vague excuses when I asked questions I thought were innocent. I should have seen it. I should have acted. But trust makes you blind in the most dangerous way. I trusted her completely, and it almost cost me everything. And then came that message from Daniel. A small note, almost casual in tone, but it sent chills down my spine. Something about the numbers didn't add up. Something about my pending deals was off. He didn't say much, just enough to make me realize that I wasn't imagining things. Something was happening behind my back, and it was bigger than I thought. I had no idea how far it had gone, or what the consequences would be. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, realizing that the storm I had been ignoring was already raging, and I was right in its path. The truth about Claire, and how deep her betrayal ran, was waiting for me, and I was terrified of what I might find. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers. Every time I tried to focus on work, my mind kept drifting back to Claire, the business, and that message from Daniel. I started noticing little inconsistencies. Emails she claimed she hadn't sent, phone calls she forgot to mention, and unexplained meetings she suddenly had to attend. My stomach twisted every time she smiled at me, because now her warmth felt like a mask hiding something dangerous. I confronted her once, casually, trying to sound calm. "Hey, have you been talking to anyone about the business lately?" I asked, forcing a neutral tone. Her eyes flickered for the briefest second, something I couldn't quite place, and then she smiled that familiar, reassuring smile. "Of course not," she said. "Why would I?" But her voice didn't carry the same weight it used to. It sounded practiced, and that doubt, once planted, grew like a shadow in my chest. Meanwhile, Daniel kept nudging me in subtle ways. Every meeting with him was a mixture of advice and warning. He wouldn't outright tell me what was happening. He didn't have to, but he dropped hints I couldn't ignore. "Be careful who you trust," he said one afternoon, sliding a document across the table. "Not everyone has your best interests at heart." His eyes held concern, but there was something else there, something almost protective, a quiet strength I didn't know I needed. The tension between hope and fear was unbearable. I wanted to believe Claire loved me, but everything else screamed that I was being manipulated. Every smile felt suspect. Every word felt like it might be hiding a lie. I couldn't work, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. The betrayal was a slow, suffocating poison, and I felt powerless to stop it. Then, late one night, I caught a glimpse of an email on her laptop. Just a snippet, a single subject line. "Offer for Alex's business. Urgent response needed." My heart stopped. My hands shook. I knew I wasn't imagining things anymore. She was serious, and she had already taken steps I couldn't undo. I felt trapped. How had I missed the signs? How had someone I trusted so completely turned into a threat? And more importantly, was it already too late to save everything I'd built? As I stared at the screen, the words burned into my mind. I knew the moment I confronted her, the truth would come out, but I didn't know if I was ready for what it might reveal. After seeing that email, I couldn't focus on anything else. My office, once a place of calm, felt suffocating. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret. Every sound, footsteps in the hallway, the click of her heels, the rustle of paper, set my nerves on edge. I replayed that subject line over and over in my head. "Offer for Alex's business. Urgent response needed." The words felt like a blade slicing through my chest. How long had this been happening without me noticing? I tried to act normal around Claire. I laughed at her jokes, answered her questions, and pretended nothing was wrong. But inside, I was a storm. I began double-checking everything. Contracts, emails, financial statements. Every interaction she had with clients or potential partners felt suspect. Every call she whispered into her phone made my stomach turn. And the more I looked, the more I found. Small transfers, unusual inquiries, and hints of deals she had set in motion without me. Then came the tension with Daniel. He had been helping me quietly, reviewing the numbers and offering advice without ever revealing exactly what he knew. But his presence made me feel safer, even as it reminded me how vulnerable I really was. Late one evening, he came to my office unannounced. "You need to confront this carefully," he said, his voice low and urgent. "She's not just playing with numbers. She's playing with your life's work." There was fear in his eyes, but also a strange, protective determination. I realized then that I wasn't entirely alone. Someone cared enough to step in, and maybe that was the only chance I had left. But the paranoia was relentless. Every time Claire smiled at me, every time she tried to calm me, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust the woman I loved. But the evidence kept piling up, whispering a truth I wasn't ready to face. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a dark room, blindfolded, with the edges closing in and no way out. One night, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know the extent of what she had done. I followed the faint trail of transactions, emails, and whispered conversations, each step leading me closer to the terrifying truth. My heart raced with every click, every discovery, every piece of the puzzle falling into place. And then I found it, something that made my blood run cold. A folder she had thought I'd never see. Files, agreements, and messages that proved her betrayal wasn't just a thought or a plan. It was real. My hands trembled as I opened one, then another. The screen glowed like a warning in the dark. At that moment, the storm I had been trying to ignore wasn't just at the edge of my life anymore. It was crashing over me. Every fear I had, every doubt, every sleepless night led to this moment. And yet, I still didn't know the full truth. Because what I saw next was something I could never have anticipated. I thought I had prepared myself for betrayal, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. As I sifted through the files, a name kept appearing, one I never expected: Daniel. At first, I froze. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Why was my trusted banker involved? Then, a series of messages popped up, messages between Claire and Daniel. They weren't just discussing the sale, they were coordinating it, planning how to take my business without me even realizing it. My chest tightened, and the room felt impossibly small. The person I thought would protect me, the man who had seemed like my anchor, had been part of the storm all along. Or had he? Confusion and fear tangled together, leaving me breathless. I wanted to confront them, scream, demand answers, but I also knew that one wrong move could destroy everything I had left. And then, among the files, I noticed a single, odd message from Daniel that didn't make sense. A cryptic line hinting that someone had actually been trying to save me. But if that was true, who? And how? The answers I was looking for were closer than ever. But now, the truth was even more dangerous, and my next move could change everything. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront them, both Claire and Daniel, before this spiraled completely out of control. My hands were shaking as I walked into the office where Claire had been working late. She looked up, startled, but quickly masked it with that familiar smile. "Alex, what's wrong?" she asked, the words sounding almost rehearsed. "I know everything," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "The emails, the deals, the messages, you were trying to sell my business. And Daniel," I swallowed hard, "you were part of it too." Her face faltered, just for a second, and that tiny crack told me she had been caught. But Daniel's expression when he stepped into the room was unreadable. Calm, controlled, almost as if he had been expecting this. "You think I was betraying you," he said quietly, "but I've been protecting you the entire time." My mind froze. Protecting me? Every message, every suspicious action, it had all been part of some larger plan I couldn't see? He explained. Claire had tried to manipulate the sale without my knowledge, but he had subtly intervened at every step, delaying contracts, warning me through small hints, and making sure the business wasn't lost before I was ready to act. Daniel had worked behind the scenes, using the very files I had discovered to set a trap that would expose Claire once and for all. I stared at Claire. Her confident facade crumbled, tears filling her eyes. You set me up?" she whispered, panic rising. "Yes," Daniel said firmly, "but for your protection, Alex. If we hadn't acted, you could have lost everything." The weight on my chest lifted, but then a new realization struck me. The final file I hadn't opened, one that seemed harmless, contained something unexpected, a note from Claire confessing that she had a partner in her plans, someone outside of our circle. And the name at the bottom made my blood run cold. It wasn't over. Not yet. Even as relief and gratitude surged through me toward Daniel, a shadow of danger remained. Someone else was still out there, watching, waiting, ready to strike. And suddenly, I understood that surviving Claire's betrayal was only the beginning. The days after that confrontation were surreal. Claire was gone, removed from the business and facing legal consequences for her attempted betrayal. But the emotional wreckage she left behind lingered. I found myself walking through the office, touching the desk I had built from scratch, looking at the files I had pored over for weeks, and realizing how fragile trust can be. The shock of betrayal didn't disappear overnight. It faded slowly, replaced by a cautious sense of clarity and the determination to protect what mattered most. Daniel stayed close during this time, not as a banker, not as a colleague, but as someone who had become an unlikely ally and, in some ways, a friend. He never tried to overshadow my achievements or take control, but quietly guided me, always making sure I was seeing the bigger picture. The way he had stepped in to save me without ever making me feel powerless was humbling. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic confession, just steady support that reminded me that sometimes love and loyalty don't look like what you expect. I rebuilt the parts of the business that had been compromised, tightening security, reestablishing client trust, and learning to trust my instincts more than ever. Each small victory, each careful step forward, reminded me that resilience isn't just about protecting what you have. It's about growing stronger through the storms life throws at you. And Claire? She became a distant memory, a lesson etched into my life. Betrayal had hurt, yes, but it had also clarified the value of honesty, courage, and vigilance. I learned that love, real love, isn't just about shared laughter or whispered promises. It's about standing up for each other when the world turns against you, even when it isn't easy. But the shadow of that final file still lingered in my mind. The note naming her partner outside our circle was a reminder that danger doesn't always announce itself. There are risks you can't control, people you can't predict, and situations that test you in ways you never imagined. I couldn't ignore that entirely, but instead of fear, I felt readiness, preparedness, a quiet determination to face whatever might come next. Most importantly, I discovered something I hadn't expected, that even in the darkest moments, people who truly care for you can appear in the most unlikely forms. Daniel's presence, his unwavering sense of protection, and the subtle ways he helped me reclaim my life taught me that loyalty and love sometimes come wrapped in unexpected packages. I sat in my office one evening, the city lights reflecting off the windows, and realized something profound. Life can betray you, people can hurt you, and dreams can hang by the thinnest of threads. But when you have courage, clarity, and someone willing to stand by you, you can survive almost anything. And maybe, just maybe, that's what matters most. Not that betrayal exists, but that the human heart can endure, heal, and even find love again in the most unexpected of places.